Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Big East Rewind. I'm your host, Chuck Everson, and my co-host, the point guard, the Italian stallion, Sonny Spera. How are you, Sonny? How you doing?
I'm good, Chuck. Our guest today can tell us a little bit more about Italy than I think I can. So
I know. I can't wait. I can't wait to talk to him. He's one of your boys. I don't know. Listen, here's the thing, I don't know what side of the fence he's going to be on. You got two bigs in the room, Sonny.
I know.
But we got two orange men. I think we know where his loyalties are. And I'm sorry to tell you, Sonny, that you're the odd man out. I'm sorry.
Hey, I'm always going to hang. I'm always going to hang with my roomie. So
that's right.
Are you guys room?
That's my roommate.
So why don't you introduce your roommate then, Sonny? Let's get the show.
All right, my roommate, man, my brother, Wendell Alexis from Christ the King High School in New York City to Syracuse to Spain to Germany to back home. He's a phenomenal guy, super intelligent. I really enjoyed getting to know him and continuing that relationship to this day. We still get together often, our wives and our kids and families, and it's a great bond. So it makes me very proud to be an Orangeman. So let's welcome my man, Wendell.
How are you, buddy?
Guys, glad to be here. Glad to be here.
Well, it's good to have you. I mean, listen, you and I go back a long way, and I know you and Sonny go back right to the beginning of your time at Syracuse. You're the one that he actually got when he recruited. He missed out on me and Jensen and Jay Billis and people like that. But you obviously took a liking to Sonny, and here you are. You wind up on the orange, right?
Yeah. I mean, actually, on my gosh, I can't remember who took me out of my visit. It was so many. It's like a blur now. But I know we crossed paths. We might have spoken in the locker room. They had me, I think, with Red.
I think you were the Red, yeah.
Red Bruin, yeah. So
okay.
that was an experience by itself. But
I bet that was.
But it was great. It was great. And like I said, I came up there after watching them actually play St. John's at the Carnesecca Center, and from there it was off to the races.
Yeah. Well, you and I met in high school because I don't know if you remember the Athletes for Better Education camp that we went to in Concordia.
Right.
So I think they scholarship 5 or 6 of us, and I believe you got scholarship to rep Queens. Spider Sally got scholarship for Brooklyn, and I was the Long Island guy at that time.
Yeah. Spider was the
Who's your point guard?
There was so many point guards there, man. I mean, that was a who's who of kind of New York basketball back in the day. And it was one of those camps, Sonny. It was like the beginning of the ABCD camp, which they had.
Yeah,
that was like the first one. And you had to take a test and then go to class during the day, and then you play at night, right?
Yeah.
Remember some of that stuff, Wendell? That was pretty fun, right?
Yeah, it was first. I know they had the GPA requirements, so they try to make it a academic, sort of prepare the student athlete, but in the end, it was just a basketball camp.
Right. But it wasn't just there was some. Walter Berry was there, Pearl was there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. A lot of top players in the city.
On and on. Oh yeah, it went on and on, man. It was really a lot of fun, and they had guest speakers come in, Sonny. So I don't know if you remember this, Wendell. So they come in and one of these speakers come in and they're asking about Rhodes Scholars. So Walter raises his hand, right? So he said, "Okay, Walter, what's a Rhodes Scholar?" He goes, "That's a dude that got recruited by a lot of schools." I don't think so, Walt. So it was a lot of fun. Pearl was fun back then, and there was a bunch of those guards from the city. It was a big cut up,
Yeah.
So talk about your time at Christ the King. I mean, that's a high school in Queens, for those of you that don't know, that a lot of girls came out of there that were real good players, and a lot of guys came out, a lot of pros came out of that school. Talk about your experience there.
When I got there in '79, frankly, we were a doormat. The wonderful Father John Savage was the AD, and he was trying to build a program, obviously through the school, and I was fortunate because, like everything else at the time, Everything was new. My parents knew nothing about basketball. All they knew was be inside the house when the street lights come on, you know, and basketball was okay as long as my grades were good. And by luck through a co-worker of my father's, I got to Christ the King. I played CYO ball in East New York at St. Rita's, and the first year I couldn't make it because I was out of the parish. There in East New York, I lived in Bushwick, so I had to take the train, several stops. But long story short, I got to Christ the King, and by the time I left, we had a good solid foundation. You obviously had a lot of kids from Brooklyn and Queens coming in. We had a player named Buzz Matthews who went to Delphi, who was the first Division One. Delphi was Division One at that time, but really the first big recruit out of the school. After that, Lamar Odom transferred in, Jason Williams transferred in, Khalid Reeves, Derek Phelps. I mean, the name just goes on, and so obviously a lot of the Big East schools, but also ACC, SEC started recruiting the Catholic high school leagues. In Queens, Brooklyn, and Long Island. That's where a lot of them at that time was a hot recruiting bed. And I remember Lester Giselle coming to Christ the King to recruit me and telling me I'm going to start over Albert King and Buck Williams. So I know he was full of it. Valvano, bless his soul, he came in and told me the same thing. I went there for a visit and had the old, and from Brooklyn, New York, and here's Wendell Alexis, They had my number and my locker assigned. So Christ the King obviously was on the up and up. The women's program at that time, again, it was like everything else in the growing stages. But again, after I left, say in the early 80s, definitely by the late 80s, it was a powerhouse, Chamiqua Colesclaw,
Yeah.
Sue Bird.
Yeah.
I mean, we have Hall of Famers, in the women's program, and it's phenomenal. And don't forget Tina Charles.
So
Yeah,
Wendell,
Tina Charles, yeah.
when did you start playing basketball?
I started at 14 years old.
That's not young.
I had no CYO, nothing in my neighborhood. It was the projects, and they actually put up a court because we were playing in the basement shooting on hot water pipes. So in order to get the kids out of the basement, they built a court. They built a court in one of the parking lots to get us out of the building. The biggest player, if I don't know if you remember this guy, the biggest player coming out of our neighborhood at that time was Sam Worthen, 6'5".
Oh my goodness, loved him.
Yeah. So there was a PS5, Public School 5 down the street, and that's where you earned your stripes. You went there. If you won, you played. If you didn't, you sat for 6 hours. So I'm basically at 14. When I got to high school, I never played summer ball, but at that time, and it was trial by fire. So I made a big improvement from 14 by the time I turned 18.
Now, when you were starting doing this, what were your parents' thoughts? I mean, since they really weren't familiar with basketball, what were they thinking? They liked it, kept you out of trouble, what?
Again, as long as I was inside before the lights were off. My father, of course, loved that he's from the Caribbean, so his main sports were cricket and soccer. So my mother, she didn't want me out late. She was worried about the streets. So it was a little back and forth. And I think probably around my sophomore year, she kind of relented and saw that it was something that I had a lot of passion for and was really enjoying it. And obviously, the recruiting part, the basketball part, she didn't care about. And for the most part, my dad, it was all new to him. So he was like a kid at Disneyland. These guys, who are these guys? Coaches will come up to them and he had no clue. Sienna from Syracuse.
I'll tell you, I got to tell you a story, Chuck. Wendell and I were roommates, and I'll never forget his dad. His dad was he didn't say a lot often, but he'd come in, and he was like, one time I'll never forget, Wendell, I found this book, and I think it's something that's going to interest you. It was something in the realm of what he did in school, and Wendell was just as polite as me. Thanks, Dad. He was like, I can't use this.
Yeah.
So,
intent-
but
the
the
intention was
message
good.
is academics is important, right? That was a message you had, and to this day is important, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, my early academic life in public school was not anything to write home about. In fact, my parents were very disappointed, pushed me to Catholic school, and that's where really when I turned the corner. Really when I turned the corner.
Now talk about when did you start getting some interest from colleges? You said at your sophomore year, your parents saw it in you, but at what point were they, were people saying, hey, we got to watch this kid out of Christ the King? When was that happening?
I think after my junior year, my high school coach at the time, Don Kent, he dropped like 3 shopping bags full of letters. And I never forget, up until that point, no coach came up to me, nobody said anything. I was just playing. And, my friends and teammates, we're riding home on the M train and we're going through these bags. And, oh, you got one here from Maryland. Oh, you got one here from VCU. And of course, I'll go home and I'm, looking up an encyclopedia or whatever I had at the time to find out where these schools were. Of course, everything sounded nice and rosy. We love you. We want you to come. We think this and that. Fill out this questionnaire. But really, my junior year was when I found out there was any interest.
Uh-huh.
Summertime. I remember we went to Sienna's basketball camp, but our team did a high school team, and my coach told me that the coach wanted to show me around and talk to me and things like that, and I was like, sure, fine. But nothing compared to what it is now. It was very behind the scenes. Letters came to the school, to the athletic office, and you didn't know Jack until they gave it to you.
Mm-hmm. When did Syracuse get in the picture?
I would say probably latter part of my junior year. When I met Brendan Malone.
I was gonna say Moses, right? Yeah.
Yep. I remember seeing him in the gym, but he would always speak to to my coach. I had a coaching changeover because of a teacher strike. So my freshman coach actually became the varsity coach. And little by little, I started to notice, coaches coming over to my dad, introducing themselves. So I knew something was up, and so it became more and more. I would say going into my senior year, end of my junior year, going to the summer of my senior year, that's when things really started to pick up.
Yeah, so Coach Malone handled all that stuff. So now you go up on your visit. What was the deciding factor to make you choose Syracuse? Well, first of all, who did it come down to? What was your final choices, and why did you pick Syracuse?
It came down to Syracuse, University of Virginia, Naval Academy, and I just had that one there to keep my grandfather happy. Because once I heard what the commitment was afterwards, I was like, thank God David Robinson did it, not me.
Yeah.
But so Syracuse, Virginia, San Diego State.
Wow.
That was
Mike Cage.
that was a fantasy visit. Smoky Games. I went out there, saw everybody hang gliding and hanging by the cliffs and the beach. I was like, I'll be out of here in a semester. I won't make it to December. I'm laid back, and I was worried about San Diego laid back. I was like, I'm dead here. No, I could hang.
You'd look like a wild child out there,
Exactly. But I knew I wanted to get away from home, put some distance, spread my wings, sort of, if you want to say. Syracuse kind of gave the right distance. Plus, play close to home, played St. John's. So I knew I'd be back. I would be back in the city, at least close by. And really, I think I remember watching them play St. John's, like I said, in Carnesecca Center, and that's where I saw the fit. The style of play, the speed of play. Conversations with Coach Malone, saying, telling me, where I'm gonna have my shot, how my game fits in. Those were the things for me that obviously, and then coming up here and really feeling the small town feeling of Syracuse, the closeness, of the town, and but not feeling overwhelmed or sort of a small fish in a sort of a big pond kind of feeling.
Yeah. It's funny because your game was like one of the smoothest, from back in those days, so smooth and unassuming.
Mhm.
And during the game, you say, we don't have to worry about him. He's not killing us. But then you look at the stat sheet and the stat sheet is completely filled up. So when you came in, where were they talking about playing you at the 4 or playing you as a swing, or where were they talking about playing you when you came in?
They were talking about playing me at the 4. And at the time, they had Leo, Red, and Eric Sandifer. And off the bench, Hawk was playing the center. Off the bench, they had Sean, Peter Wynn, and Larry. Can't remember Larry's last name.
Larry O'Neal.
Larry O'Neal. And so I can see, I think at the time, Boeheim realized he needed to get, faster, longer. Myself, Rav, John Carpus came in. And so we were almost like a different evolution of the forwards at Syracuse. Longer, quicker, more agile. Right.
A little more range, shooting.
Right.
More athletic for sure than what they had there. I mean, Raf was a killer at the top of the press and the trap and all that kind of. He was, because he's so long, as you are
big
too.
Big guard.
Yeah,
and he could play the 2 or the 3, Raf, which that's very versatile. And Wendell could play the 4 or the 3 as well. Because back then, Wendell, tell Chuck, we played a little man to man.
Yeah.
This much, Sonny.
No, we played man to man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, we played man. We trapped a lot. You really had to, couldn't be slow of foot. You wouldn't play much, and we would trap at the point. We would trap in the corners, not on the wing, but in the corners and at the top. Because we had a lot of long arms and legs, and we were ready. We were ready to go. I always tell the stories of preseason of Boeheim's class. And how many drops we had the first week of class when they say you had to run a 5:30 mile the first day. Guys would start pulling the slips. I like to drop this class.
Yeah. I told Sonny we had to run a mile for
conditioning
time.
for basketball is what it was called.
Yeah, we had to run a mile for time.
Boeheim and autographs. Like only autograph you're gonna have is your lunch on this floor. You chuck it up.
Some of the stuff that they did back then for training and stuff was great. We had to run a mile for time too. So big guys had to run 5:50, and they made it like a horse race. So everybody had odds on their back of their shirt and everything. And
we had to run it every day.
100 to 1,
We had to run that time mile every day.
Yeah. Oh, really?
If you didn't make it,
you kept changing the times.
Hawk must have loved that. I mean, I know Hawk since I'm a kid. He must have loved that.
They had 2 times, right? They had one time you had to make it, and then you didn't have as much timing the rest of the week, or you got timed every single day. And if you didn't make that time, then you had to run a second mile that same day.
So talk about practices for a second, Wendell, because we really didn't get into that kind of stuff with some of the Syracuse guys that we've had on. And I know on when you watch Coach B, on the sideline, he's a big time. He's a first team big time yeller, like some of the rest of the guys in the Big East at that time, and Massimino and some of the other ones that we had. Talk about that, because Sonny has mentioned more than a few times that you caught your share of hell from him in practice and stuff. Talk about what that was like, coming in from Queens and coming in with a good reputation, a pretty big time reputation. You got recruited by a lot of places, and now you're coming in and this guy's getting after you a little bit. Talk about what that was like.
It was my freshman year kind of went, I would say, kind of quiet. I played maybe 7-8 minutes. Got in a few games. Sophomore year was really when the bottom fell out. Gene Walden said he was glad I came, because now he could his Bam's teeth marks and his ass can heal. They were all on mine. But looking back at it, I wasn't playing up to my potential. I wasn't playing up to what he thought I was capable of, and so he put his foot in my behind, and it really helped me. You know, maybe not the way he did it, but certainly the result and intention of what he was trying to do. So practices, you know, I give a lot of credit to Bernie Fine, to Brendan Malone, and you know Wayne Morgan that work with the big guys. Bernie had some archaic sort of drills, um, but they really helped us. You know, you sliding with bricks in your hands, and you know other kind of drills that really helped develop you and build your stamina, build your legs, things, you know, being able to recover. You know, we had a lot of ground to cover in the zone in man to man. So I credit them a lot with my development. You know, one of the regrets I had when Coach Malone was there, he would always come by, hey, give me 10 minutes, give me 15 more minutes. You know, let's work on this. This is after practice, after running up and down for 2 hours. So, you know, you were exhausted. And I said, you know, I wish I would have taken advantage of those, you know, those minutes. Because usually they go from 15 to a half an hour.
Right.
It's never 10 or 15 minutes. Exactly.
No, you know,
Yeah.
you know, Coach Malone was going home, watch a game. You had to go study or go to study hall.
Right. But you remember we also had training tables. So if you stayed too long, you missed dinner.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
you were looking at the bottom of the pan.
it's like
Because Hawk was there first
Oh.
all the time.
Well, yeah. Well, you know what? That's why he's in shape to get to the table. That's for sure. I know that myself. I was that guy at Nova. Let me ask you guys something, the two of you guys, while you're both here. Was Bernie, from my perspective, playing against both of you, was Bernie the guy that kind of kept the glue? Was he like the glue of that team for the players? Like, was he the guy that the players leaned on a little bit to? You know, sometimes, you know, with us, with Coach Mass, you know, we would go talk to Coach Lapis or, you know, Coach Marbach. There was one guy that you can go to and say, man, this guy's killing me or whatever's going on. Was Bernie that guy for you guys?
Bernie was that guy. Bernie was that guy. You know, in the huddles, he would whisper to, hey, box out. Hey, you know, anything technical. Hey, you're doing great. Hey, watch this. When they call this play, watch that. But he was always whispering in the big guy's ears. You know, he was our you know, position coach, if you want to call, but our guru that saw and knew each guy's weaknesses. You know, somebody tended to ball watch too much and somebody sneak baseline. You know, he would always, you know, he would be on our ass about it. He'd be yelling from the bench.
You know, it's very true. It's very true. Brendan was, you could tell Brendan was a creative thinker. Like a lot of times you had no idea where his head was at. So you knew ultimately he was going to be a head coach, right? You really did, because he was trying to put all the pieces, he was trying to solve, you know, time travel. And Bernie was like, okay, listen, this. And he was the guy he was the glue. He was the administrator. He was the guy that you could speak to. And to this day, you know, my birthday was the other day. I think the fourth call I got that day was from Bernie, you know, so he maintains contact with his players to this day, and we love him for it. So I'll vote that for 2. But I will say one other thing to Wendell, because I was there, it was my junior year, and coach always gets a sophomore. He kind of, freshman year, he kind of leaves you alone. Sophomore year, he'll pick up. But I know, and I'm glad you said it, Wendell, because Raph and I had this conversation about you. And we both felt that Coach Boeheim knew what you were capable of. He knew, and you were not scratching the surface. He thought you were going to be a great pro, etc. And he compared you to some other players, some guys on St. John's, I know specifically, and even guys on Nova. But he knew that you were going to do that. And I guess that was probably his way of getting you there. And it's hard at the time, man, because it's like you're in a bubble. If I made a mistake on the floor, Coach might have yelled at Wendell. You know?
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. So it was like,
you know, it was like when Pearl got there.
Yeah.
You know? He'll be yelling at somebody on the bench, like, Coach, I'm not in the game. No, I don't give a damn. You
Cheer louder.
yeah, you know. He start pointing and jabbing at you.
Yeah. So now, Wendell, right? You're at Syracuse, right? And you come in, and you mentioned the guys in your class. You come in with Raph. Did you guys have any relationship prior, or really was it just you guys met up in the Cuse?
We met up at the Cuse. I mean, I doubt if we ever crossed paths. And the first time we spoke was Raph was up at Syracuse for the summer. Coach Malone called us, and I think that's probably the first time there was you know, call, what do you call it? Call, two-way call or call sharing, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
You know, I was home working, and that's the first time we talked. So I mean, rarely did I go to New Jersey, and I think rarely he came into Brooklyn. So we ran in different circles. But once we got up to Syracuse, we were all in the same world.
Yeah, because you guys were linked. You guys were definitely linked together, and a lot of it was the skill sets and what you guys brought. And I think it was, a change of what was going to happen. Because trust me, at Syracuse, they weren't too happy when they signed me. They were like, "Oh, what? This is not a big time recruit," So the next class they came and was like, "Oh, we got some 5-star players here." They didn't call them 5-star back in the day, but they had some great recruits. So now you're there, and okay, so you talked about playing St. John's. How was the Big East? Did you appreciate what the Big East was? Because I know when I started, I did not. Did you? Did you have a kind of an idea? Hey, this Big East is special.
I knew the competition was so deep that if you didn't come ready to play, you're gonna get your behind handed to you. At the time, during the time I was there, no, I did not. I knew, hey, I got to face Ed. I got to go to Boston College and face the Penguins with Roger McCready, and then you got Jay Murphy shooting jump shots, and Troy Bowers, and so you had all different sizes and shapes. And then you go to St. John's, and it's you had the full gamut there, and no team, even UConn, they're like chihuahuas, but they're always nipping at you, and you just want to step on them. And every team presented a different challenge.
They did.
Very true. And so you had, it wasn't like you can play one way. Of course, at the time, we're taller, longer. Teams are, sandbagging the game and slow. And all I remember, a lot of guard play, a lot of guard time. We had, not to look back, we had some great guards. Great guards that could shoot, that can handle, that could distribute, that could, defend. Naturally we had some bigs, Pat and everybody else. But when you look at it, between Pearl and Mike Moses at St. John, every team had a top-notch point guard.
Yeah,
yeah, they did.
Wilbur, Gary, everybody.
Yeah, you're right. And everybody had that one or two studs on their team, Right. So who was, for you, I mean, obviously the Georgetown rivalry was kind of a big deal, but who were the guys that you go, man, I don't want to have to play that guy tonight? Who was that guy for you?
Me, it was Boston College. Because like I said, Gary
was tough, man. Jay was the first guy to really go out and jack up jumpers, and not like, Jay would fit in the game today,
I played against Jay in Italy, and we talked for a little bit, and we were both saying, like, man, if they had the 3-point line when we played, we could have added a couple hundred more points.
No kidding.
Because we were shooting 3-pointers back then. We didn't know, on the floor, but it was one of those things. He's shooting jumpers. He's 6'10", and then you got Roger McCready 6'5", and he put his butt on you. It's over. And they had this offense where everything was like on the baseline. So you're defending down there, and then they kick it out, and you got little Michael Adams shooting jump shots,
floaters.
So so it's they're playing against you guys. When you got in the game, you're like, oh boy, here we go. Chuck is going to hang all on top of me, and push and shove. And I remember we were talking to John Carpus, and we're like, yeah, he's like a damn king size mattress you can't get off your back. That's how we described you. You're like a king size mattress you can't get off your back.
Yeah, I was as mobile as a king size mattress too back then.
Chuck, that's very affectionate, Chuck. That's a very affectionate way.
That's a nice way of looking at you.
So when I got to ask you, the Georgetown rivalry, right? I mean, we were born and bred with it. Right. Do you have any memories of any of those games? I mean, there were some fierce battles.
Everything. I mean, just the aura and the media perception of the team. How they carried themselves. One of the very few teams at that time in the country that had black coach, all black players. So that came along with certain connotations.
Yeah, it's true.
And you know, and then of course they were getting all Americans, so they weren't no scrubs. You
No.
know,
Right.
they could play, and they had they had that certain rough and tough tumble kind of game, and you knew, hey, when we played them, keep your hands up, especially by your ears. You know, and of course, you know, you had the games at home and at the Capitol Center, but I think the best ones were always at the Garden because um, you know, I think at that time between St. John's, Georgetown, you know, ourselves, you always had to watch Villanova, and anybody can, you know, knock you off, have a good night. The games were highest level competition, and I think the highest level of passion because you realize everybody in the country knew who you were, where you played. I mean, to this day, I'll walk in the mall, I'll walk in the store, I'll be in the city. Hey, you look like, first I hear Dr. J. I'm like, yeah, I'm his illegitimate son, right? And then they'll say, wait a minute, didn't you play for Syracuse? And then that starts oh, I remember.
Now, Wendell, you were on the floor when Andre and Michael Graham had their little incident.
Little dance.
Were you on the floor when Patrick and Pearl got into it?
I was on the floor at the time. Yep.
I thought you were. I thought you
Yeah.
were.
Yeah.
Now the rebound that Andre got, you had just
Right.
missed, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
When Andre comes down with it.
Gene Smith put two hands and shoved me in the back, and that's what allowed
Dean
Michael
wouldn't do
Graham.
that. He's a buddy now. He wouldn't do that, Wendell.
Oh, sure, no, you know, I'll still hold on to a chair if he was holding it for me. But in the case, I saw a recent clip of it, and I'm like, why? You know, I'm thinking you got Pat, you got Michael, and here's Gene Smith right under the basket. You know, just what he liked to do at the time is get up underneath you, and if you know, big man, you don't see him, then he's snatching the ball. He's right up under your chin. And so he was in there, but like you said, I missed the rebound, and that's where allowed Michael to come in. Luckily, it bounced back to Hawk, and Michael, I guess Michael smelled the dunk, but until Hawk got in, and one thing about Hawk, once he got his hands on it, you weren't getting it from him.
He had some mitts, man, just so strong. Mm-hmm. His hands were like vice grips.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's funny when
you know what his claim. Wait, his claim to fame. He could take a bottle cap, right, and he could take it with his fingers extended, and he would take it and he would crush it like this. Try it sometime. It's not easy. I mean, he had this grip, and I'll never forget. Yo,
strength in his hands and fingers.
Yeah,
I would take like my whole hand. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, it's funny Wendell. It's, you know, since we've been doing this, we've had, I don't know, 6 or 7 of the Georgetown Hoyas on, and you know, the perception that you have of those guys when we're battling on the floor and everything was going on is not the way they are when you get to know those guys. I mean, they're a lot of fun, and everyone is a better guy than the next one. I mean, from Pat to Reggie to, you know, all of them, Mike, you know, we've had all of them on, and and even Sonny will tell you as a true Orangeman, you know, that he, you know, even he couldn't believe how great they were to deal with. So, you know, the stuff that goes on back then in games and wars and stuff and the battles, you know, everybody's battling for the same turf. Everybody's battling to have their team, you know, to be number 1 in the East. And that was the best thing about it. But when you played, if they use Georgetown for an example, if Georgetown is playing North Carolina or somebody, I'm rooting for Georgetown. We're all rooting for Georgetown.
Right.
You know, I don't know about you guys. The orange thing, that goes a little deep, but everybody else was rooting for Georgetown in the Big East.
It was the same thing. I remember watching the championship game and, you know, hoping that they win. Of course, they won the second time, but you were always pulling for them because you know it meant what it meant for our conference. I mean, frankly, at the time, when you're watching the game, you're like, you know, between them and Tim and them and, you know, North Carolina, you were always pulling for Georgetown, but you wouldn't tell anybody. You know, you were watching the game and watching what's going on. But just a quick story. I remember it might have been late '90s, you know, close to early 2000. Patrick was coaching at the time. I was in Orlando for a basketball camp or tournament or something like that, and down on the floor, and you know, we saw each other, and we just, you know, we went over straight and said, hey, how's it going, you know, and it was just like we knew each other for years.
Yeah.
but he recognized, remember me who I was, and obviously I knew who he was, and we had quick conversation, and again the perception, like you said, and the back then of what they were and what the media made them sound like was obviously more so than when you, as you mentioned, got to speak to them in person.
Yeah, that's very true. Very
Mhm.
true. I think we've all had those kinds of encounters with guys that we played against. And it's like, I had a similar thing with Otis Thorpe one day at a game, my daughter's game. I ran into Otis and he was like, "You're not going to say hi, Chuck?" And he came over and gave me a big hug, and, and we were buddies for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, it
Right,
was,
right.
it was great.
Was
And
he
doing
sharp-
this
was-
show and doing this
Was he
show. was
sharpening
coming
his
across
elbow?
that.
Was he sharpening his elbow?
He doesn't have to. It's always sharp. It's like it's like a Cutco knife, Sonny. You
He
don't
was
have to
fierce.
sharpen it,
He was fierce.
He was very tough, very tough, very tough. So now, Wendell, you get drafted by the Golden State Warriors, right? And one pick before Drazen Petrovic, I might add, which he was a pretty good player too. I got to play against him. And you wind up going to what? First of all, what happened at Golden State? And then you wound up in Europe, and you had a stellar career in Europe and Germany, Spain,
Phenomenal
Israel,
career,
to name a few places. So before we get to Germany and that, what happened with Golden State? How did that all work?
Well, obviously, I got drafted. I went to rookie free agent camp. Things went well there. Then I got recommended by George Karl, who was the coach and GM at the time. And it was almost like a Big East homecoming. Sleepy Floyd was on the team. Chris was there.
Yeah.
Joe Barry Carroll.
Wow.
Yeah. So he claimed one day, this is in veterans camp, that I was going to be he's taking me under his wing. I never was more afraid of someone saying they're going to take me under the wing, because obviously he didn't have a great reputation with some of the other guys. If Purvis Short said it, I would have been like, great, I'm going to learn a lot from Purvis. But in Joe Barry, I'm like, oh no, this is not going to be good. But nonetheless, I got to veterans camp. I went to play with Milwaukee after the free agent camp. Del Harris was the coach. Things went well, and got to training camp, and all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 other forwards. Rod Higgins, who was, he's a couple years older. He played around the league. This guy named Ben McDonald, come to find out, he played at Cleveland with George. They had a Cleveland connection going on there. So I was the odd man out. Too many guaranteed contracts. They kept Higgins and McDonald. McDonald was like a hybrid point guard. He's like 6'5", 6'6", built like a like a fridge. And George was in love with him. So it came to, I got cut opening day. I had my uniform, my bag, and everything else. Went and got a haircut because we were leaving that evening. Get back to the hotel, and the red lights flashing. So Clinton Smith was my roommate. We look at each other, and we're like, "You ready to answer it?" So I, me being the brave one, I picked it up. Of course, I got the call, come down to the office. So I took the red eye back to New York, and I left so fast. I took the uniform and everything with me. They were like calling me, "Send the uniform back," And that was probably mid-October, late October. Within a week, or by Thanksgiving, I was in Spain. I went over for Eddie Wilkins. Remember him from the Knicks? And in fact, I think
Wilkins, yeah,
okay. Eddie Wilkins, right? And a couple of weeks later, he's playing with the Knicks after getting cut in Spain.
Wow. So go through that for a second, because maybe people don't know. You were allowed to have 2 Americans on your team in Europe, right?
Yeah, 2 Americans.
And one dual citizen, right? Which meant, well, I mean, one, you could probably have more than one, I think, right? Dual?
No. At that time, it was
one.
It was 2 Americans, and that's it. There was no EU at the time. There was no, most of the national players played in their country. The only way you played in another country is if you had family or generational.
Well, if you were, if you had a passport from there,
Right, grandmother was Spanish.
So if right. So like a dual citizenship kind of thing.
And you lived in France, then you can
So
could slide
who
over.
was your dual guy? Was that guy that had family there or whatever? Was he a notable guy or not really? Just a
Not
regular?
really. Most of the guys, that team was built really just on a lot of local guys and young kids. The American that I played with was Floyd Allen. He was out of Texas, Texas Southern, one of the small schools. Not, but again, I lucked out getting a 23 in green, new on the scene. You get thrown over there. There was no out of bounds. It was like turn over to the sideline and you're gone. No handed to the ref. So things were a lot quicker. 3-point line, and now all of a sudden I'm playing the three. So, my ball handling was not as great, because when I'm in training camp with the Warriors, I'm playing some three, more four. Backing up Purvis, backing up who was at the time the four-man, Larry Smith. So
Right.
now I get over there and I'm forced to handle the ball. And at that time now, it might be a little going back in history. I'm playing against Americans that played in the NBA, but like in their mid-30s, so they can still play. I'm talking like Reggie Johnson that played for the Sixers, Joe Merriweather, Anson Lavadrama, all big guys. Most of the Americans over there, very few guards. There weren't many guards, because the Spanish, they're notorious for their guards. They got guards and shooters. They didn't have big men. So it was a wrestling match and headbutting all the time. But thankfully, the Big East prepared me for that. I think at that time when I got there, I realized the physicality of the Big East. Playing in Spain against older guys, it didn't bother me, and that's when my game started to flourish. Now I'm playing in the open court. Now I'm handling the ball. I'm shooting, and I'm shooting 3-pointers, and I'm like, this feels comfortable. And so it was maybe a blessing in disguise, because of the fact that, of course, the Spanish game and European basketball, for that matter, was fast paced. It was built on a lot of action, quick action, and then really a lot of individual skill. David Russell was over there. John Pannone was over there. They were playing together in Madrid.
Yeah, they played together. They had a pretty good team, and John was a great.
He's a national hero. He's the mayor. He's the
That's
mayor
what
of
they
Madrid.
told me. Yeah, I heard that. I mean, he did his interviews in Spanish, is what I think. That's what I heard. So
yeah, David too.
That's pretty cool. Dave did too.
So Wendell, I got to ask you, right? So think about it, right? In college, we didn't travel that much. You flow a game here, you fly a game there. Now all of a sudden you're out in Golden State, then you're Milwaukee, you take a red eye back home, and then shortly thereafter you're in Spain.
Right.
What's that like? I mean, and you're by yourself, right? Or were you married to?
No, I'm by myself, right?
By yourself, and you don't speak the language, and they drop you in Spain.
Right. So I fall back to my high school Spanish.
Casa.
Yeah. Buenos días.
Baño.
¿Cómo estás? Luckily my wife, fiance, girlfriend, she spoke Spanish, so we and to tell you the truth, in between practices, what I did, I watched Sesame Street in Spanish, and that's how I picked up a lot of the language. And of course, luckily for me, I was in a town where one of the biggest universities in the country was, where people from all around Spain came to Valladolid to go to school. They had an engineering school, they had a medical school, so it was a university town. So I'm there with people my age, and now I'm speaking, I'm practicing, I'm hearing, I'm seeing, I'm reading, and after a while, a month or two, everything starts falling into place. My colors start coming back. And I'm reading the paper. So it immersion in the language and the culture really helps your assimilation, not only in the culture, but meeting, and now my communication with my teammates becomes easier on the court, off the court. You know, relationships start to merge. And now you know, by after I got to November around Thanksgiving, by January now, we're starting to click.
Yeah,
You know,
that's pretty good.
yeah.
Then
That's great.
that how about in Germany? You wound up, I think you played the majority of career in Germany, right? Berlin.
With one team, yeah, with one team. After traveling, you know, I went to Italy after Spain and was there for 6 years. You know, picked up the language there, loved it there. Played everywhere from Tuscany to Sicily. After that, I went to Israel. Went to Tel Aviv to Maccabi for a year. Came back. Went to France. Probably real lucky. I played in a lot of major cities. You know, being from New York, you know, playing in Madrid, playing in Paris, Tel Aviv, and then Berlin finally. Um, really helped. I played in the small towns too, and believe me, you lose your mind sometimes. You know, you come out 7 o'clock and it's dark and nobody on the street. You know, everything's closed. So going to Berlin, playing with Alba again, it was one of those situations where I walked in at the right time. You know, team that was trying to get to the top, always get to the top, lose in the finals, lose in the semifinals. And, you know, again, I was the right player, the right time, the experience, the style of game that fit in with the team. And practically at that point, I'm 32 years old. My game evolved from, you know, coming over, giving me the ball, get out the way, you know, scoring my points to now being able to, I won't say turn it on and off, but know when to step on the gas and know when to, you know, let the other guys sort of drive the bus.
Now talk about your experience in Italy when you came across our guy Raph.
Oh, so I'm finishing Madrid. We get to the finals. We lose to Barcelona in both cases, you know, and there Americans are, you know, a dime a dozen. Apparently, they signed Petrovic and Johnny Rogers to replace myself and the other American. So, like, fine. I go to a team in Italy, and the Americans there were, what's his name? Scott, that played in Indiana. Um, gosh, can't remember his first name.
Keith Smart?
No, Scott. 6'7" forward, burly guy. And
Hastings?
any case, there were two Black Americans there, and I'm coming to town. And actually, I spoke to Raph before I got there. He kind of gave me the inside. You know, Raph, he has the inside scoop on everything, right?
He does.
Where to go, what to eat, who to watch out for, who's this, who's that. So he gave me the you know, the white paper on the team. And so I was fine, you know, good. We get there. Then I realized what rivalry, because it's a coastal town. There's two teams in that town. And, you know, their fans hate our fans. They hate our team. We hate their team. And they're writing, you know, it's a seaport. They have this long wall along the port. And that's where they write, you know, messages about your mom and your sister and your aunt and everything else that they could do. So playing against Raph was great. You know, we kind of rekindled our relationship. You know, at that time, I guess he came over after playing the NBA for a couple of years, and the affection, even to this day, to this minute that we speak, if you mention Raph's name in that town, people start crying. That's how passionate they feel. You know, unfortunately, the team went under. The team that I played for went under, but now they're trying to, you know, bring basketball back to the city. So they're starting in the lower levels and bring themselves up. But
Scott
I mean,
May, was it Scott May?
Scott May, right? Scott May.
Yeah, he was a good player.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: so when you were in Tel Aviv, I'm just curious. Was it during the time where there was a lot of conflict and fighting going on over there? And what was that like being in the middle of that?
The year I was there, I'll tell you this. The first day I get there, my apartment's ready. It's right on the beach. Open my doors. I got the ocean in front of me. I'm looking around, and say, wow, this is beautiful, you know. And I'm hearing, all of a sudden I hear, I'm like, what the hell is that? You know, I'm used to the train from Brooklyn, you know, clackety, 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 clack. I'm like, so then I look, helicopter with rocket launchers flying about 60 feet over the water, coming down. About 2 minutes later, one's coming up. So I'm like, what the hell is this? They're like, oh, you know, we've had problems before with, you know, terrorists, people trying to sneak in. You're right there on the beach. I mean, literally 100 feet from the beach is apartment buildings. You know, it's a complex. So there's families, kids, everything there. So it's a target. So I said, okay. Every once in a while, you hear, especially up in the northern part, you hear this whistling sound. What's that? Oh, those are missiles that flying. They're firing back over into, you know, the Arab part. So a country of extremes. You know, Tel Aviv is like LA. That's the best way I describe it. And I've never been to LA at that point, but I mean, it was great time, partying all the time, people working, traffic, you know, all the things of a city. The year after I left in '94 is when a lot of the bus bombings started. While I was there, once in a while you'll hear something. The workers that come in, they have a curfew where they have to be out of the city. And you know, for the most part, everything goes fine. There's one part of the city that's Palestinian, you know, or called Jaffa, and it's like right in the southern part of Tel Aviv. That's where most of them live. But my time there was great. Traveling, we did some international traveling. First time, uh, I traveled with a team that had security. We had, you know, a guy by the elevator and a guy in the hallway and a guy in the lobby. And everywhere the team went, that's where they were.
Wow. So you're
Now,
writing
Wendell,
home. There was no email or anything back then or text messages. So you're writing home to mom and dad, and you know they're
Postcards.
wondering what's going on, and you're talking about the helicopters overhead and the whistling bombs, and that's gotta be unbelievable. I mean, that's, you
Yeah,
know,
and then you go up in the north, you know, where they have a lot of the what they call them kibbutz and the settling, and you know you're right at the border, and you constantly hear this whistling or sirens going off. You know, they're like, oh, if the siren goes off, you got to go that way to the bomb shelter. I'm like, bomb shelter? What? I'm here to play ball. They're like, well,
yeah,
it was a hell of an experience. Hell of an experience.
I guess
so
so.
Wendell, you could speak Spanish, Italian, German, right?
German conversationally, because you know, come to find out, there's conversational German, and then there's business German, and then there's, you know, friend German. I'm like, look, pick one. I'll work with that. Forget all, you know, forget the other two.
Now, in Israel, was mostly English, or did you have to speak any other languages?
No, you know, you picked up a few words here and there, but it was a lot of English spoken. You know, I knew I was in trouble. You know, in the States, you know, you read the paper from right to left, right? So I'm looking at the, you know, Israeli paper, and they're like, "Hey, you're reading it backwards." I'm like, "What the hell you mean I'm reading it backwards?" No, you got to start from the back, and they go this way. I'm like,
Wow. How about that? That's crazy.
yeah.
So you're one of the few guys, and I know we mentioned John Panone earlier. He had his number retired in Spain. You had that honor of having your number retired in Berlin, right? What was that like for you?
Oh, surreal. You know, it was first of all, when I left, it was sort of acrimonious because you know, I was there 6 years, and like every player, you know, when you know things not going to go on forever, right? And at that time now, I'm like 38, so I'm feeling it, and I know like you know, my time is coming to an end. And one of the things I always said, and then when I want to kind of think the way I carry myself, I always try to carry myself with class and respect, and and you know, of course, as a professional athlete, things are always not going to end the way you like. So it was kind of, you know,
Right.
the season was over, they cut it, and you know, without saying like, hey, this is our last year. but I was on 1-year contracts at that point and at that time. So several years later, I guess after bridges were mended and conversations were had, I came back and it was a great event. They first did a teammate of mine that played for North Carolina, Henrik Rodel, who's a national team coach. They did him first, and then they did me, because it was probably the best era of the team at that time. It was sort of jam packed into a weekend. I basically went over for a weekend and came back home, but it was great to see a lot of the fans and German fans. One thing, they're not as passionate as say Italian or Spanish fans, but they appreciate expertise and high level
Yep.
play,
Precision. Yep.
and precision, yeah, sort of built in their culture. But I think at that time, the league was growing, and really it was, prior to that, it was always another team that dominated. So things kind of go in cycle. Rarely is it a different team every year. Usually a team dominates for 2 or 3 years because they have the best national players and they have the right combination of Americans, and that's what it was in Berlin. Right
So
time, right place.
I got to ask you, because at some point you became part of the USA basketball team. When was that? When did that all go down?
In 90, I think it's 98 when they had the lockout.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was home playing the Jersey Shore League, and you're hearing about the lockout and the players not playing, and then the dream team, this and that and the other, and then the lockout happened, and then all of a sudden, you're watching ESPN, looking at the news. Oh, what's going to happen with the World Championships, because they were in Athens, Greece at the time. So I remember hearing, oh, they're going to have to find players and this and that. So I reached out to my agent and I told him, I said, hey, if they're looking for guys, I'm willing to play. So he said, okay. I guess he reached out to the powers that be. So I started trying to recruit. I reached out to David Rivers. I called Conrad McRae, because they were all playing over there at the same time as well. David was playing in Greece. Conrad's playing in Italy. So I'm like, God, I have those two. We're good, right? And Conrad turned it down. David was living in Orlando. He's like, I got sand in my toes. I'm not going anywhere. So I went over, and again, you even from our own media, they were giving us a hard time because, of course, we're not Shaq and the rest of the thing. But all the groundwork was already laid. We practiced in Chicago. We had the tryouts there. Then we flew to Monaco, played the French national team. Then we flew to Rome, played the Italian national team. So it was needless to say a great summer. And then when we got to Greece, we had a young team. We had a mixture of college players and some pros. I was for the first time in my life the oldest guy on the team, and it was great playing for Tomjanovich, Rui T. Dale Harris was a coach as well, and Lonnie Kruger. And guys fell into the roles real quick, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
That was the first time I had seen you play in a long time, Wendell, and I just remember looking at you in the jersey, and I was like, "Oh, he'd been in the weight room. Whoa,
Yeah.
whoa,
Yeah.
You were a stud."
Yeah, by that time now, and I'm like in my early 30s. My body finally caught up, and because in college, you everything's going in your mouth and coming out where. No, you can't hold on to anything. And so, at that time now, my regimen had improved. A lot of obviously my body matured, and I was a lot more comfortable in my skin.
Yeah.
What are you doing these days, Wendell? We've had a lot of questions come in through the email. The guys are asking us to ask that question of our guests. So what are you doing these days? What do you do?
I work for a large health system here in Jersey, RWJ Barnabas Health. I'm director of corporate partnership. So with that, I work obviously with, unfortunately, with a lot of the New Jersey schools, Rutgers, Seton Hall, get to a lot of Seton Hall games. And we're the official healthcare partner of many of those universities, and also for the New Jersey Devils. So with that being said, we provide my office, or our office, is the liaison between the teams and our medical staff. You know, getting guys get hurt. You know, we're setting up basically clinics and operating rooms in the Prudential Center.
Yeah.
So I see a lot of the hockey players. You know, I'm now a hockey guru.
Really?
Yeah, you know, coming from Brooklyn, I didn't see ice until December, January.
Gonna help those guys out with their teeth? Give me a call.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey,
It's all built in.
A little Syracuse referral. So there we go. A little Syracuse referral. Here we go.
Actually, I mentioned that to the coach that, you know, if you guys need some, I know a good dentist in Binghamton. They kind of looked at me
There
like,
you go.
Yeah. We'll drive to Binghamton.
yeah. Yeah.
That's great.
So that's
Well,
their team is, right? The youth team or the underclass, what do you call it? The sort of like their G League team.
Who's that?
The minor league team for the Devils.
Used to be. Not this year.
Oh, they moved?
But it was. Yeah, it was. It was the
Okay.
Binghamton Devils. Yeah, we were. Yep.
I know.
Yeah.
I know during the pandemic they moved down to Jersey
Yep.
and played there.
Yep. They
Well,
didn't return.
Wendell, I got to say it was great catching up with you. You're a great example to some of the younger players that you've been successful throughout your whole career.
Everywhere.
Didn't really play in the NBA the way everybody wants to as a kid, but was
Right.
very successful playing in Europe and after basketball, which is even more important. You know, you
Right.
did your homework, you got your books, you got your degree, you did what you had to do, and you know
Mhm.
you've been a very successful guy, and it, you know. It's great. You know, you're somebody that, you know, young guys can look up to that are in this league that are playing. And you're the kind of guy, you and Charles Smith, I think are two of the guys that we've had on that
Mhm.
people can really look up to aspire to be like. So we really appreciate you coming out and hanging with us. I know Sonny's your boy and you get to see him a little bit, but it was great catching up with you, my man. Thanks for being on.
You as well. You as well. Hope to see you guys next week. Yep.
Hope to see you soon.
You got it. We'll see you Tuesday night, man.
All
You've
right.
been listening to the Big East Rewind with Chuck Everson and Sonny Spera. The Big East Rewind is produced and directed by Nick Chico Chorus and Daryl Gurney. You can catch us on YouTube. If you go into the search bar, you can put in Big East Rewind and all of our shows come up. You can check them out. Please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Everybody take care. Have a great night. Thanks for hanging with us. Bye-bye.